Let's go to Alan Watt. Alan, so much is happening in the world. I've got all my questions, but I want to get into what you think is most important right now. But we're seeing just an acceleration of the program. The street lamps we already knew had microphones, many of them. Now they're admitting it. The chemtrails, they're now admitting it, saying it's for your own good. The plan to give us forced inoculations and release mosquitoes that put nanotech viruses into us to re-engineer our brains, give us basically servile lobotomies where we can't get angry or whatever. That's all being announced. Eugenics is being announced. Just pell-mell evil, Al-Qaeda flags, going up in Libya. Peace Prize, children's faces blown off, just giggling, snickering depression, wholesale insanity. Are they just trying to overwhelm us right now to make us go into a catatonic psychological state of learned helplessness, Alan Watt?
I think it could be partly that because of the ones who are following this whole program. But you got to remember that most of the populations are not following the program. They've never really been awake. They follow mainstream and lots of entertainment. I think they're pushing now because it's time to push for this whole amalgamation into they call it the Great Transformation. That's the official title of it, at this stage of it. And it's a transformation of the whole planet into the system that Quigley touched on. He talked about the economic side of it, mainly the economic side, as they amalgamate the continents and the central banks into one system under the Bank of International Settlements. He talked about this in the 60s. So we're on course with all of this. And I think the public are so dumbed down today, to be honest with you. It's time now to push for the next part. All the public really know from watching mainstream is that all economies are in bad shape, pretty well, except for China. And that we've got to do something about it. So they're preparing the public's minds for a new type of economic system, which is to be introduced in different countries, probably a starter in Europe and then eventually into America. It's a new economic system based on resources and taxation by consumption. A value-added tax will replace, basically, eventually it will replace all other taxes. And so you'll be kept at a certain minimum standard of living in a communitarian living area, your region or your local area for communitarianism. They've got it started off in Britain. It's going pell-mell there. And it's to be introduced into the States. In fact, they've just started, the same organization that started it in Britain has just launched their big movements in the U.S. as well. So it's a whole new way of living. They call it a scientific economy, scientifically designed, run right down to your local level and what you do or what you're assigned to do with your new kind of job. And when they can make people helpless enough with a bad economy, the general public will grab at any straw to save themselves.
Well, they also admit, as you know, that it's designed to shut things off, that you will live at a lower standard. The government publicly, to kind of the unwashed masses as they see them, say we're trying to make your life better. But in all the public manuals and even public statements, it's like we're going to shut everything off from these people and start euthanizing. And don't you like that, slaves? And the slaves go, yeah, we're trendy. Kill us. Mm-hmm. We're trendy. Oh, yeah, we like it.
You understand, too, Alex, that all the old values that kept society strong, like that kept communities, real communities, natural communities strong, and that also gave you your values between each other, have been destroyed, demolished since the 1960s, basically.
Now, they don't want us. We're going to break, Alan. I want you to continue along that line. They admit in all these handbooks, we've shown them on air, they teach it to the regular social workers at UT in the handbook. The family's a disease. It's got to be removed. But they really don't think it's a disease. It's a disease to the globalist. They don't want you having any sense of identity and any real roots. You've got to be like a blank slate they just download trendiness into. And then you just go, oh, my God, I take a shot, I get brain damage. It's so much fun. Wow, I'm dying of cancer. People are dying all around me. It's trendy. Fluoride in the water. It's trendy. Government gang raping me. It's trendy. All right, let me bring this up for Alan Watt. It's up at drudgereport.com right now. We'll get it linked up at Infowars.com as well. But this is out of NBC Los Angeles. Russian genius lived with 26 corpses. Some skeletal remains were reportedly dressed up as a doll and a teddy bear. Wow, I'm a better newsreader when I'm totally tired. So I get so excited normally I can't even read stuff when I'm not burnt out. A Russian man who speaks 13 languages and lectured at Museum Head the corpses of 26 women in a small apartment. Anatoly Moskvin, 45, had dug up many of the mummified bodies from graves, and some were dressed up and arranged around his 3-room apartment in western Russia. According to BNO News, the bodies were discovered after his parents came for an unexpected visit. I'm sorry, it's just so sick. I'm laughing as it's sick. Russian, imagine his parents walking in. Oh, but he's such a nice man. See, this is what government is like. It's far worse than this. And as the IQ goes up, this gets even more common. Russian media reported the bodies were females, ages between 15 and 26, who died years ago. But it goes on. Life News said that he's a historian who sneaked into graveyards at night, dug up bodies, and took them home in plastic bags. Back in his apartment, he dressed up the bodies as dolls, wearing dresses and stockings. That's actually a phenomenon. I've seen cases of that in the U.S., people that are in love with corpses. Now, skeletons, actually. But, you know, it's funny. Alan, this comes out, and they're calling this guy sick, and I agree, it's completely insane. But the royal family, it just came out, has been, you know, recently, not just Vlad the Impaler days, eating human body parts. They say they believe it's nutritious, which adds to all the lore. This is a short segment, long one's coming up, but from your research of the British royal bloodline, which is German, that's really Transylvanian, and all of this, why are so many of these elitists into this stuff?
It's an ancient myth or belief in regeneration, basically, especially if you get, I mean, we know in ancient times and probably into the Middle Ages, they would actually collect the menstrual fluids of women and drink that, believing it's restored youth to them. The same thing is still going on in some circles today to do with the blood that comes from the umbilical cord of babies. In some circles, they definitely still do that. But that was traditionally a royal thing to do, and it goes back all the way back to Egypt, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, here's what the commenters are saying. They were actually Chicago registered voters. The next one said, everyone thinks this is funny and strange, but here in Chicago, these people, these dead people, would all be called voters. Other one says he wanted his mummy. The other says what some guys will do to get a date. How much lead time does one need to put away 26 corpses before mom and dad come to visit? I mean, again, but this is seen as sick, but when the royals are into this stuff, it's seen as loving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we know too, that you understand that Kabbalah was very, very high in the Middle Ages, and especially in France and England too. But in France, they have found some of the paraphernalia they used in the royal courts during that time for the king. And they found skinned babies, you know, the skin of the babies were there. That was, again, a rejuvenation thing. If you wore the skin of a youth, and it went through this ritual, it supposedly restored youth to them, that's what they believed. And of course, the chalice for the blood and all the rest of it. So they've always been into this kind of thing. They've been fascinated with, when you're up there in power, you've got nothing to go for but more power and immortality, and this is part of the Kabbalistic rituals they went into right through into King Louis XVI. You know.
Why is Prince Charles now making such a big deal about he's a Transylvanian and he's got a house there, Vlad the Impaler's old house, and he loves it?
He's around something, but I wouldn't go too far with it. But I mean, Charlie is a numbskull too. And he's really pretty stupid. I mean, even at school, I talked to one of his headmasters once, and he said the same thing to me. And but Charlie had no purpose for a long, long time. He said that he is descended from David. He said he was an Olympian from the old gods of the Olympics, and there's a secret society too. And he was defender of faith, the faith, which is Christian faith, and he changed it to defender of all faiths. and now he's trying to say that he's Transylvanian. What they're trying to make out is that their ancestors were Saxon people or Prussian people that once dominated Transylvania as well as one of their biggest states. In reality, it's Saxe, Coburg, Gotha are the three main houses they come from. They were Prussian, German states, basically.
Yeah.
They were all from the same family, interbred. And eventually, in 1800s, in the early 1800s, in fact, 18th century, I should say, they brought in merchants, very rich merchants, and they married into them. They became the dominant strain.
Stay there. We'll be right back. Stay right there. I want to talk more about that with Alan Watt and a lot more. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Alan Watt, CuttingTheMatrix.com, is our guest. And we are bringing you the 4th annual Money Bomb to expand this independent media operation. The nightly news reports that then are put out to the four winds of the web after they first air at prisonplanet.tv. We are having just a giant effect thanks to your support, and the donations are really starting to pour in right now. We've gotten up to about $300,000. We haven't quite updated that yet, and it'll really help us expand. So I want to thank all of you. InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. I mean, where can you say that by spreading the word about a show or supporting us or donating, that who can you say out there is having a bigger effect out of all the great people that are out there than this transmission? This is also a platform for all those great people that we have on, like Alan Watt. So donate today at InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. I'm getting a little bit of weirdness on my mic here. I don't know what's going on with this, but I'm getting a little bit of that flutter thing it does every once in a while. Or like distortion in my ear. I'm not quite sure, but I might check the board in there and see if something's been changed, or perhaps it's in here. There it stopped. I don't know if people could hear that on air. But we're going to open the phones up, too. It's 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. If you have any questions or comments for Alan Watt. Alan, the reason I keep going back to this is knowing the enemy, knowing the global elite, knowing what they're into. Obviously, I don't believe there's real vampires running around. People have archetypes for all of this where they could say it's vampires, it's reptoids, because, you know, we're saying these aren't humans. They don't act like humans. Psychopaths don't act like humans. But really, they're just, I guess, genetically different. They don't have empathy. In fact, a lot of them enjoy hurting innocent people. But is that, from your research, that's why every culture has these legends of vampires and stuff? And because, well, in a lot of cultures, it wasn't even, I mean, they were doing human sacrifice. They were blood drinking. And you study the elites, they're obsessed with this. And that's why they do the things that they're doing. Alan Watt.
Well, yeah, it's a very primitive thing. It goes way back into ancient times. Even when some of the tribes did, and some still do in Africa, drink the blood of the cattle as they move, which is a more practical thing. You understand that. But of course, when it comes into the psychopathic type, they want to stun those they want to subdue. They want to stun them by doing something which terrifies them. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did this in ancient times publicly at times as well, drinking the blood of humans or a sacrifice or something like that. So, but then again, as I say, in the Middle Ages, you had the magic part coming into it from the Eastern Europe and blending with it, and that became very popular in the circles of royalty. And up to the present time, too, that there's a lot of strange things to do. I mean, a psychopath has no inhibition. You've got to understand that. It doesn't matter what culture that they instill upon the people, that they always put a culture on the people and have their managers to manage that culture. Today it's all sociologists that do it for us, you know, and psychologists, and neurologists, and neuroscientists, they call them. So they give us the present culture. They work with industry. They work with the media. They work with all entertainers today, and they have for a long, long time. So, but the psychopath himself doesn't follow that culture except in public for PR shots. He'll seem fairly normal, read scripts. But in private life, they have no inhibitions whatsoever. The laws that apply to the general population never apply to them. They're above the laws. And they can get away with, they actually break a lot of laws and be untouched, because you'll always find, if you go into the law books, royalty cannot be charged or fined for anything. They're above all law. They can only be tried by a peer group, which is other members of royalty. And that's why you're tried by a jury of your peers. Commoners are not the peers of royalty, you see. So they have a completely different way of doing things. But there's nothing new in this whatsoever. There's a famous club in London that's still on the go, I think. And Lord Mountbatten used to take little boys, underage boys, into this club. It was a lot of money to get in at the door, unless you were a member, so it kept the public out of it. Many reporters actually from Fleet Street got in there, and they'd often see Mountbatten sitting with a little boy and getting him pissed drunk, and going up to one of the rooms with him. No one ever reported on that, except one later on years ago. Actually, he did it by word of mouth, but he couldn't report it in Fleet Street, or they'd have been fined, charged. The newspapers would be closed down, actually, if you actually published something like that.